it now gives me enormous pleasure to introduce Jude Currivan, one of my favourite speakers. She always does a riveting talk on, and today it's about the holographic nature of the universe. She's a wonderful speaker, she's a wonderful lady, a wonderful friend. Jude Currivan.
I want to send out a health warning before I begin. I think in another life I was a temple dancer, so I throw my arms around a lot. So if this microphone ends up somewhere in Evan's lap or possibly Stu's lap, I apologise in advance. Thank you, Ervin. Thank you, Joe and Laura and everyone who's responsible for this amazing gathering. And I'm sorry I wasn't here yesterday to hear some fantastic speakers, and I hope I'll get a chance to catch up with you guys later. But I'm delighted we're all together today. And again, my thanks too to Karen. That was a beautiful attune. I call them attunements rather than meditations, because in my sense of things, meditations are when we empty ourselves. Attunements are where we literally attune to what you were just talking about, what I call the universal heart, where we come into that coherence, that remembering of the oneness of which we're all part of. We just forget sometimes, but that beautiful attunement really got us there. And before I begin what I was supposed to be talking about, whatever that may be, I just wanted to sort of say a quick word about why I feel sound is so powerful. Because both sound and light are exquisitely structured to enable information and holographic information. So sound and light are exquisitely structured to enable information and holographic information to be embodied. For example, going back some years, there's a study of sound called cymatics. And if you play a single note against a medium that can reflect it, you'll see geometric patterns. And of course they show up geometrically in 2 dimensions, but actually they're forming a holographic representation in 3. So when Karen's notes are heard, she's setting up essentially an acoustic hologram of information, which depending on the note, enables us, as we were talking about, to explore different realms. And the binaural aspects of that set up a complementary resonance, which enables that process to be even more powerful. And of course, light is the other exquisite, physicalized way of maximizing, literally maximizing holographic information. So sound and light are incredible healing modalities, because what they can do is to actually embody within their notes, within their vibrations, the information of remembered perfection. So when we become out of balance, when we forget the oneness of all that we are, sound and light are amazing way showers and guides to remembering that oneness and that wholeness, whether it's on our own microcosmic consciousness level or literally the oneness of all that is and has ever been and will be. And I want to go now on to that, if I may. Where do we begin? First of all, I'd like to thank a few friends of mine. Copernicus, Isaac Newton, Ludwig Boltzmann, Albert Einstein, Max Planck, and many others, because what I'm really excited about now, having had walking between worlds, having mystical experiences, numinous experiences since I was 4 years old, and then becoming some form of scientist or cosmologist, is that finally, we really are on the threshold of a 21st century scientific revolution, which is far more than that, because it's actually a revolution of awareness. All the other revolutions, and this now builds on them. Isaac Einstein, there's a name for you. Isaac Newton used to say he could see so far because he stood on the shoulders of giants. We all do that. In whatever work we do, in whatever lives we live, we stand on the shoulders of giants. And what I'm going to be sharing with you this morning stands on those shoulders. It stands on the shoulders of an Isaac Newton who understood that the laws of physics didn't just pertain on Earth, but throughout the universe. They are universal, and if they were not universal, we couldn't do any science, let alone have any collective consciousness of exploration and experience. So that was enormously important, and of course, the understanding, or at least the beginning of the understanding of gravity too. We go on, and in the 19th century, Ludwig Boltzmann came up with two absolutely fundamental laws of physics called the laws of thermodynamics. And I want to come back to them because at that time he was looking at gases and how gases behaved. But those two laws, I'm now suggesting we can restate in a way that fully encompasses not just information, but information as the basic predicate of consciousness. So thank you to Ludwig. In the 20th century, of course, we have two revolutions that are both scientifically based, but don't actually talk to each other. One was quantum mechanics and quantum theory, which explains the tiny aspects of quantum behaviour at the subatomic scale, or it was thought to be subatomic, it actually isn't. And the other was relativity theory, which looks to understand space-time. And we talk about both of those, but I want to come back because they really have been not reconciled until now. So we're now in a position, not just, I feel, to reconcile quantum theory and relativity theory, which is lovely, but far more importantly, encompass all of that with an expanded understanding of our universe, of our physical world, but beyond that. And at the very heart of that, the very soul of that, the very basis of that, the very all-pervasiveness of that is consciousness. As I said, this revolution couldn't have happened until now, because the 20th century science was all about energy and matter, it was all about space and time. But because those two theories that describe them have been seen as irreconcilable, people have been searching for a deeper understanding ever since. But of course, part of the issue was an unwillingness to include consciousness. And consciousness has been the elephant in the room. It's been the elephant in the room since Newton, when the church was saying if you study spirituality, you are a heretic. So people went, oh no, okay, I'm only dealing with physics. But the reality of it is consciousness is the elephant in the room, and unless we address it and understand it, any science will be limited, any science will be unfinished. And that's the exciting thing now, because as humans, we tend to take the scenic route sometimes. And we took the scenic route in a way after the 20th century scientific revolutions, because the pioneers of those, in the main, were spiritual. They realised that what they were trying to explain was something that was part of a much bigger perspective, not just of the physical world, but the nature of reality itself. But that view got sidelined pretty quickly, even though all the clues were there. The clues from the quantum world that you cannot separate observer and what is observed. The major clue that has now been absolutely experimentally proven, that reality or physical, certainly quantum level, but I would argue completely at the universal level, physical reality does not actually be realised until it's measured, observed, or information is accessed in some way. Now we know that at the experimental level, but I want to argue that that is the truth of the entire universe. We also know that from quantum theory that the deeper reality is that everything is interconnected at a non-local level, beyond the limits of space and time, spontaneously connected. And we know that not just through experiments in physics, but we know it as well through all the meta-analyses of supernormal phenomena and experiences that we have innately, because that's the way the world ultimately is. So those clues were there, those clues have been building, the experimental evidence has been adding and adding all through the last 80 or 90 years. But what's been, I guess, missing is a way of encompassing all of that in a more comprehensive cosmology. And one of the reasons for that is we needed to invent computers, of all things, to actually come to an understanding. We needed to develop 20th century telecommunications. We needed to be able to get, or begin to get, that information isn't just data. That information is much more profound and fundamental. And so this leading edge emergent revolution is about that. And of course it's a slippery slope, because if you start to realise that information is all pervasive, is fundamental, is more fundamental, more primary than energy and matter and space and time, it is a very slippery slope to consciousness. It's such a slippery slope, I don't know how anybody can avoid that endpoint perspective. So what does that actually mean? Well, before I go into what I believe it means and some evidence, and I just want to sort of talk a little bit about, first of all, technologies. What I'm really excited about is virtual realities and holograms, because what we're finding is that having put technology first and the philosophical and spiritual and consciousness perspectives of science out the door for a long time, it's almost as though technologies are bringing us home. Because the virtual realities, the holograms of all our latest gizmos, are literally the kids' toys for which physical reality is the masterclass. It's the same information, it's the same flows and processes and sharings that apply in our latest technologies that actually are leading us into almost an acceptance that this could be how the real world is as well. And that, I feel, is really exciting. Having said that, the other thing that's absolutely wonderful is that across virtually every field of scientific endeavour, this understanding of information, in other words, patterned, meaningful, ordered information, is fundamental, is coming out in droves, whether it's at the level of the Planck scale, I think Stu was talking about yesterday, which is minute compared to the atom, as the atom is to the whole universe. From that level, that Planck scale, pixelation of information, through to studies in physics, in biology, in complex systems, in meteorology, in human behaviours, the evidence is rolling forward. To give you a few examples. In the last few years, it literally is over the last few years, evidence is showing that the same informational patternings that guide phase transitions in atomic structures is exactly the same as the intergalactic webs, the galactic clusters. So from that atomic scale to the galactic cluster scale, the same patternings are happening. A couple of years ago, astrophysicists at Harvard Smithsonian realised that the growth of cities is exactly the same as the way galaxies evolve. I said this at Tillingham, but I think somebody sort of queried how could this be. So I want to say it again, but I want to say it with a sort of a peer review on this. Analysis of earthquakes, they're encoded in something called the Gutenberg-Richter scale of earthquakes. You've heard of the Richter scale of earthquakes, okay? What that shows is there's no such thing as an average earthquake. They don't obey this sort of bell curve type average like our heights do. Instead, they obey what's called a power law, where the scale of an earthquake and its frequency, when you measure it, forms a straight line. In other words, the only thing we can know about earthquakes is that one that is twice as powerful is 4 times less likely to happen. Yeah? Now that's a natural phenomenon, right? But when Lewis Richardson, just after the Second World War, analysed over 300 conflicts lasting over the prior 100 years, he discovered that the scale of a conflict, whether it's a small regional problem down to the world wars, against the scale of fatalities, obeyed the same power law as earthquakes. And more recently, Neil Johnson and his team at the University of Miami have studied insurgencies in Iraq and Afghanistan and found exactly the same thing. What that shows to me, whether it's cities and galaxies, whether it's conflicts and earthquakes, whether it's the fact that the dynamics and the evolution of ecosystems also embody the same informational relationships, scaling up and scaling down, dynamic informational flows at points of emergence, or whatever. That all, again, embodies exactly the same informational patterns, holographically realised as our human behaviour. So ecosystems behave like the internet and the World Wide Web. The way we return library books, who'd have thought it? The way we actually are on our mobile phones, the patterning of that, the pattern of how we surf the web. Think of all our own individual choices, whether to go on the internet or not at that moment. Think of all our individual and collective choices, whether to go to war or not. And then we look, and it's the same patterning, whether it's ostensibly man-made behaviours or whether it's ostensibly the natural world. And this is showing up against every scale and across every field of research. There's so much evidence, I can't go into it now, but what I'd like to do is to just flag those few examples, but then go on to what does that mean? How can we restate our understanding? Not just of the physical world, because that is just what we're seeing is an aspect of universal consciousness. Because what this is showing, ultimately, isn't that consciousness isn't something we have. It literally is something that we and the whole world are. Now, when we get that, and as you know, Karen said, not just at the head level, but at the heart level and the hands level, that transforms everything. When we really get that we are consciousness, we are microcosms of universal and ultimately cosmic consciousness, then we get also at some point that we are not separate from each other. We are diverse, unique, because consciousness is not boring. Consciousness isn't making little sort of cookie cutters of itself all the way through. Consciousness, from the simplest rules and principles, Einstein said this, the universe is as simple as it can be, but no simpler. And what that means is these basic rules are so incredibly, exquisitely ordered and simple, to the extent I wish I'd thought of it, but it's... but I did. You did, and we did. But it's from that innate simplicity that the complexity of and emergence of ever greater level of self-awareness within a universe-soul cycle is evolving. So I want to sort of go on to that a little bit and just give you the shape of what seems to be coming from many, many, many different strands of insights into a cosmology that I feel literally has the power to change the world, because it does call upon us, it reflects back to us the reality that we are consciousness, that not just on individual microcosmic levels, but on collective mesocosmic levels, that on universal levels, that ultimately on cosmic levels. So let me aim to do that. The first thing that I guess most folks find tricky is, and I've been very fortunate because I've walked between worlds and had all sorts of experience since I was tiny. So this has never been something I've had to struggle with. My struggle has been how to stay grounded, how to stay here. And thanks to folks like Karen and many others and my own guides and teachers, I've been able to somehow plant myself. But it's this apparent difference between the real world of solidity and consciousness. And I'm going to say information at this point in time only because that's the easiest way I think we can bridge the hitherto apparent divide between the two. I mean, this table looks pretty solid, yeah? This floor looks pretty solid, yeah? Okay. Well, a couple of thoughts for you, and this is the sort of the one that you're probably all aware of. If we had a hydrogen atom, looked at one hydrogen atom and scaled it up, so that instead of being absolutely minute, the proton of its nucleus was about this big, yeah? Which is about a radius of 1 centimetre. The electron in that atom would be over half a kilometre away. So there's a lot of no thingness in the apparent thingness that we have. If we were to do the same with our solar system, if we were to bring our sun down in size to about this big, and we had the Earth in ratio would be about a metre away, and microscopic, the nearest star beyond our solar system would be 250 kilometres away. Okay? There's a lot of no thingness, but it's much more than that. Because when I talk about a proton looking like a ping pong ball, it's easy to get a ping pong ball, right? But that isn't what a proton is. A proton is a mix of quarks within it that of themselves are excitations. They have no size that we're able to measure in a materialistic way. They are excitations of information in standing waves and dynamic waves of interaction. So basically, as the quantum physicists got a long time ago, but is ever more being seen as the case, what we call physical reality is incredibly ephemeral. The only reason we don't go through this floor, by the way, is something called the Pauli exclusion principle, which means that the spin, the way that the excitations move, is rather like, Stu, close your ears now, because I'm going to say something that you'll shoot at me for being too simplistic. But it's essentially so they're going that way, or they're going that way. So when you go that way and that way, you can't pass through each other, yeah? But if they were going in the same direction, they would complement each other. You could go through each other. So light does the latter. Light can be, photons of light can cluster together like a really good group hug, yeah? But the material particles of quarks and electrons can't do that. And that's the only reason we don't go through the floor, because they're not able to sort of occupy the same quantum states. So it's beautifully, exquisitely set up that we get this perception of materiality, which actually is incredibly ephemeral. So that's coming from one direction. The other is coming from the information direction, because information is as physically real as any atom, as any quark, as any electron, as any table. This was postulated a while ago by two scientists, Leo Szilard and Ralph Landau, who are basically saying that to either save one bit of information or erase it would impact it in thermodynamic ways. In other words, it would change temperature, it would cause work to happen, it would change its entropy. Yeah? And in 2012, a researcher called Antoine Berroux and his team proved that. They were able to show that that isn't just a postulate, that is the reality. That when you erase a bit of information, or you store one bit of information, physical, whatever physical now means, work is done. So what we're getting is we're getting a congruence of information being physical and what we call physical reality as being ephemeral. And it's in that congruence, it's in that joining of those two concepts that really have only been understood in the last couple of years, that we're finding the basis for something more fundamental in our understanding of reality than energy and matter and space and time. So to go on to the next step, we need to go back to Ludwig Boltzmann in the 19th century. And Ludwig Boltzmann was an amazing person of insight, but he was very fragile. And sometimes, scientific revolutions, as has been said in terms of paradigm shifts, go forward through funerals. Well, this one did, because Thermodynamics was not proven until 4 years after his passing, and he committed suicide because at the time most of the scientific community thought he was talking rubbish. So that's just a warning to us not to get into that place. But the point is that, you know, his laws of thermodynamics are absolutely fundamental. I want to explain how, by restating them in informational terms, we may just have a way of reconciling quantum theory and relativity theory. And that comes alongside some cosmological discoveries over the last few years. Because astrophysicists are realizing, for many years it's been debated, is our universe finite or infinite? Yeah? More and more of the discoveries and the physical evidence suggest that we are in a universal cycle that is finite both in space and time. It began 13.8 billion years ago. It will likely have a completion, and maybe not so far in terms of many billions of years that we originally thought. And there are a couple of reasons for that understanding. First of all, the cosmic microwave background, which is the residue of the early universe, has finite wavelengths. And having finite wavelengths means, by convoluted physics, that you're really talking about a finite space. We know it had a finite beginning in time. And we also know now that most of the stellar formation in our universe has already occurred. It's slowed right down. So we are looking as though we are in the middle-aged years of a finite universe. Literally universe-soul cycle of consciousness. Now the first law of thermodynamics that Boltzmann came up with was that in a closed system, energy is conserved. In other words, you can change it, you can do what you like to it, but it's the same at the beginning as of the end. Okay? Now, if we see our universe as being a closed system, a finite system in space-time, with a beginning in space and time at the Big Bang, and an ending at some point in the future, then we can apply that first law of thermodynamics to show that the universal energy, and now matter, because they're equivalent, is conserved from the very get-go to the end. But more importantly, information expressed as energy, matter, is the same from the beginning to the end. It just changes its form. Now, many cosmologists are working on this, including Lawrence Krauss and others. But what we seem to be having is when we consider information, so we restate that first law beyond thermodynamics into information, then we have a way of understanding universal energy matter, which essentially is the basis for quantum theory. Put that to one side. The second law of thermodynamics, I think, is even more important. And there are many views that believe that this is the one, which says that the entropy of a system has to increase. Now, entropy is an interesting concept. How many of you got kids? Right, so most of you know about entropy. It's order to disorder. Order to disorder. That's the one way of it going. But of course, that's been seen in thermodynamic terms. What was very interesting that many years ago, a telecommunications engineer called Claude Shannon realized that the information content of a system is exactly the same equation that describes the thermodynamic entropy of that system. So let's restate that second law so that information expressed entropically must increase. Now, we'll take a step beyond that into the nature of space and time. Because essentially, when we're looking at entropic information, which must increase, one of the things that cosmologists have realized that because our universe started in such an incredibly ordered state, that time had to flow in one way, because you can only move from that ordered state entropically greater. So that actually caused the arrow of time to flow within space-time. Yeah? If we take a side turning, not a cul-de-sac, but a side turning into black hole research, we also realise that the thermodynamics of a black hole and its event horizon can be modelled informationally. And when we do that, we realise that the information content of a black hole isn't proportional to its three-dimensional embodiment. It's actually two-dimensionally represented on its horizon surface. So what we get is a perspective from black hole research that not only gives us an understanding of information as being more profound than thermodynamics and what may happen, but also a way of understanding how we can extend a black hole perspective to the scale of our entire universe and see that what we call space, what we think of as three-dimensional space, can actually be considered as a holographic projection from a boundary. And what we're finding across all of those other areas I was talking about earlier is the holographic signature, time and time and time again, in informational dynamics and relationships and flow. So what we're finding is not just that information is fundamental, but that it's expressed holographically, and at the scale of our entire universe, to the absolute pixelated scale of space-time at the Planck level. So what we've now got when we look at restating the second law of thermodynamics as a second law of information is that we have a deeper understanding potentially of space-time itself. Because if we go back to that incredibly ordered state of the Big Bang, where the informational entropy as expressed as space-time is at its minimum, literally, time is the accumulated experience of increasing entropy. And space has to expand, because by doing so, ever more bits of information can be expressed on its boundary and therefore experiencing what we call space-time. So what you have is this not Big Bang as big in a bang. It wasn't big, it wasn't a bang. It was an incredibly ordered outbreath of consciousness, as the ancient Vedic traditions talk about. And by doing that, by restating the second law informationally, so information expressed entropically as space-time is basically how we experience the universe. And that is relativity theory, because within space-time, the speed of light is a limit, and yet our entire universe is a unified, coherent entity. The first law restated allows our universe to exist, our universal energy, matter to exist. The second law restated allows it to evolve so that we can experience time, we can experience causality within this construct of consciousness we call our universe. As space expands, which it needs to on this holographic informed model, it does mean it has to enable ever more experience, exploration, discovery, self-awareness to evolve. And what the exquisite nature of all of those factors playing in from the very beginning do is it's perfect to allow the emergence and evolution of ever more self-aware microcosms of consciousness within this universe-soul cycle. Now, by talking of our universe as being finite in space-time, my perception, my understanding, whatever, is that that is still within an infinite cosmic plenum. Literally all that is and has ever been and ever will be. But what this allows for is a perception of physical reality that actually is grounded, but more than that, is consciousness exploring itself. Which means that there is no duality. This idea of how does mind arise from matter, there is no duality. Mind is matter. Matter is mind. Matter is an expression, an energetic, material expression of the informational flows of all-pervasive consciousness. We can do away with that perception now. We come to a monistic perception. But a monistic perception where we still are unique perspectives, where we still are unique microcosms of consciousness. Because as I said, the one thing that is very clear from our amazing diversity of life, of experience within our universe, is that consciousness is not boring. There is never a snowflake that's the same as another snowflake. Okay, at the basic level maybe of quarks, you have to have some commonality of quarks, electrons. But beyond that, the incredibly exquisite nature of the forces that play out, the informational flows that play out, don't just allow for, facilitate, actually insist on ever greater level of evolutionary awareness. And yet, within our own experiences, within our own understandings of causalities and explorations, we are all part of a coherent and unified entity called our universe soul. And universes in this perspective, and more I think astrophysicists are getting this, are like bubbles, are like beautiful out-breaths of Brahman that come, that live, that are born and live and die. And when we look at the reduction in star formation now, one of the latest estimates is that our universe will come to an end in tens of billions of years. So it might be a universe that lasts for 30 billion years. And there are ways that cosmologists are now understanding may bud off new universes. The centres of black holes may go into an intrinsic spin process when new universes are birthed off. And at the end of a universe's life, again, we're not sure how the consciousness of a universal experience comes back into the cosmic plenum. But just as when we pass, when Evan's near-death experience, you realise that our consciousness doesn't cease when we take off these clothes. It continues. And I've had many experiences of that myself. So our universe soul's experience perhaps just enriches the infinite cosmic plenum for other universes to take up and experience. Life after life after life after life. But on what a scale! On what a scale! And on what so many different levels of experience. And not just the humans, because one of the things that I get concerned about is this idea of if we're not observing something, does it exist? Yeah? Quantum experiments clearly show that, as I said earlier, when we observe something, when we access information from something, we realise it. That's in the lab. That's in our small scale stuff. We also know that from our supernormal experiences to a great degree, and synchronicities and all sorts of things. But we are we are microcosmic consciousnesses. Our entire universe soul is a group consciousness. We don't have to observe something. Our universe is always observing itself. Time is our universe thinking. Space is our universe breathing. We're along for the ride. We're crucial aspects, microcosmic uniquenesses, notes, universal notes, cosmic notes of this adventure, of this exploration. I'd love to have time to take everybody through the whole emergence of biological life, because I know that it's something that some of you are very deeply into. But one of the things in my new book that's coming out next March, called The Cosmic Hologram, I've done, the whole latter part is the emergence of biological complexity in life. How ecosystems and the organisms within those ecosystems are co-evolutionary partners, and how our human behaviours are holographic too, as I mentioned earlier. But just to say that when we look at all of this in information terms, we understand how, when ecosystems and humanity are on the brink of a breakdown or a breakthrough, as we pretty much are at the moment. Certain informational things happen that may strike a chord with you, and if I've got a few minutes left, I'd love to just explore them. Have I? Okay. First of all, when a complex system, and for complex system, read ecosystems, read humanity, is at a point where it's breaking through the hitherto relatively stable boundaries of its fractal attractors, which is the underpinning patterns of information that play out in what we call physical reality, then a number of things happen. First of all, there's something called critical slowdown. It's as if deer in the headlights stuff. It's as if we're not sure where to go. There's a slowing down. The normal patterns of behaviours are disrupted. Yeah? There's also something called autocorrection, where the system tries to deal with that. But the problem is that because the system itself is less stable, it finds greater difficulty in recovering from events. Does this sound familiar? Yeah? It also undergoes what's called flickering. And what flickering is that if you can think of our human collective psyche and behaviours as a pattern, the way we've been for a long time, and we're juddering at the edge because it's unsustainable on many levels. There is potentially a higher level template of coherence, yeah? That those who are able to see and experience and be awake to that possibility are informing. It's a new template of possibility, of coherence, yeah? But what happens is the system that is now more and more unsustainable, and this new, not yet fully realised template flicker between them. There's an informational flow. It's like, you know, if on a healing level, and a number of us work as healers, and I do so now on a collective and planetary level, it's like if you've been in a pattern, in a rut, in a trauma for a long time, you sort of know that it's a problem, and you want to jump out of it, but the rut is so deep that you get pulled back into it. The fear pulls you back. The love liberates you. The fear pulls you back into it. Well, that's essentially what flickering does in the way that I've been describing our human situation. We're flickering between fear and love. Fear and love. So all the things that play out and are playing out, in my perspective, in world events, reflect that. Because when we still see ourselves as separate and other and excluded or not good enough or whatever, that is part of our unhealed psyche. That is part of us that either doesn't want to know or can't bear it or is such pain by it. So those events will continue to happen and become more and more in our faces, because on a collective level, we are trying to inform this higher coherence template. But whenever we fall back into the fear, we continue the instability of the old paradigm. And when we flicker into love, we strengthen, we empower, we inform the coherence of this new potentiality. And that happens, as I say, through ecosystems. It's happened throughout the history of Gaia. Because what happens in emergence is that information and informational templates will take the easiest route. They take the easiest route, like water running downhill, they take the easiest route. So if you have a stable ecosystem, there's very little speciation, new speciation, there's no need. Everybody's running along in their own little niche and evolving within species a little bit here and there. But if there's more of a disruption, then there's a greater level of change that what's called transient information comes in and starts to run through an emergent process to try and deal with that upheaval. Yeah? We've had 5 near extinction events, or probably 5, in the Earth's history so far. And after every single one, even when they've been up to 95% extinction of existing species, the consciousness of Gaia, the information that is inherent in her entirety, has to really do something more. It's like we can't just bumble along. The whole of Gaia had to respond hugely, whether it, including the 65 million year old asteroid impact in the Yucatan. There is far, far, far greater new speciation following such an event, because the information has to redefine itself. It has to repattern itself to the new circumstances. And we're in a situation now, the Anthropocene. Gil phoned me the other day and started talking about the Anthropocene era, or era, E-R-A, and I thought he said error, E-R-R-O-R. And I think Anthropocene error is what it is. We've fallen into this fragmented, worldview that's caused all sorts of issues as we've got. The point is that when that happens, the whole system, the whole of Gaia's consciousness has to respond. And for me, this flickering into love is crucial if we as a species are going to be part of that solution, or that Gaia is going to do what happened 65 million years ago when the dinosaurs and many, many other species died and a tiny little mammal, shrew-like mammal, became us. If there is a breakdown, then there will be a breakthrough. It probably just won't work with us. So we have a choice. We're either part of the solution or we cease to be in the game anyway, I think. Because that's what information is, that's what consciousness is. And I'm incredibly excited because I feel this is a time when, despite all the appearances, we are remembering who we really are. Whether that's through the beautiful work that Karen and so many others do, in terms of helping us to experience the remembering, whether it's because at the leading edge of science, finally, the elephant in the room is coming into play and trumpeting its presence of consciousness, or in whatever way, there is so much moving forward. There is so much within this process of flickering that is informing this new way of being. This new way of being that integrates head and heart and hands, that integrates the feminine and the masculine, that integrates a remembering of who we really are, that integrates our relationship with each other, with ourselves, with each other, with Gaia, and with the wider cosmos. And that's why I'm delighted to be here today, and why I'm delighted to be a fellow traveller at this amazing time with you all.